This is the intriguing story of a rude and arrogant man named Dil, who, at the brink of death, received help from a lady he had once crippled. Grab your popcorn and dive into this fascinating tale. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today, we're talking about a captivating Nigerian movie that's more than just entertainment. It's packed with lessons you won't want to miss. Let's get into it. Dil is a bitter and unsympathetic man who treats his workers with utter disrespect. One morning, he scolded his cook harshly just because she added a seasoning cube to his fried egg. She tried explaining, but he refused to listen and stormed off to work in anger. Meanwhile, Ogechi, a young aspiring musician, was woken by a phone call from her cousin Isioma, who had amazing news. Donflex, one of the biggest producers, loved her demo and wanted to meet her. Overjoyed, Ogechi screamed, drawing her mother's attention. Upon hearing the news, her mother celebrated with her, thrilled that Ogechi's long-awaited opportunity had finally arrived. At Dil's office that same day, his secretary brought him a file. Instead of calmly addressing any issues, he began berating her cruelly. Dil's constant bitterness raised questions. What could be the cause? Later that evening at home, Dil was with his girlfriend Esther when her phone kept ringing. Suspicious, he asked why she wasn't answering. She claimed she wanted uninterrupted time with him, but he didn't believe her. When he demanded to see her phone and she refused, a struggle ensued, injuring Esther. Upset, she left. On her way out, Dil's father noticed her injury and apologized on behalf of his son, promising to speak with him. When Dil's father confronted him, Dil claimed Esther was cheating on him, though he had no proof. He wanted access to her phone to confirm his suspicions. His father advised him to manage his temper, pointing out that everyone, both at work and home, was complaining about his behavior. The next day, Ogechi and Isioma met with Donflex for an interview about Ogechi's music career. She impressed him with her talent, and he assured her he would work with her. That evening, Dil visited his cousin to discuss his issues with Esther. Once again, he blamed her, but his cousin advised him to apologize, as he had no evidence to support his accusations. Dil returned home tipsy that night and demanded food from his cook, Ireti. When she explained it was past midnight and she hadn't expected him, he flew into a rage, insulting her and insisting she cook for him immediately. The next morning, Dil apologized to Esther, promising to make it up to her. Meanwhile, Ogechi and Isioma signed a contract with Donflex for her record label deal. That night, Dil and Esther went on a date. While Esther was approached by another man in Dil's brief absence, Dil saw them talking and instantly assumed the worst. He started a fight, hurling insults at both Esther and the man. Unable to tolerate his insecurity, Esther walked out. Later, they argued over the phone while Dil was driving. During the call, Dil accidentally dropped his phone. At the same time, Ogechi and Isioma were driving home from Donflex's office. Ogechi dropped her phone and leaned down to pick it up, causing a collision with Dil's car. Ogechi was rushed to the hospital. While she underwent surgery, Isioma confronted Dil, blaming him for ruining her sister's life just as her dreams were coming true. Dil, in turn, yelled back, refusing to accept responsibility. After the procedure, the doctor informed them that Ogechi would be confined to a wheelchair for the time being due to spinal injuries, but assured them she could recover with time and healing. The doctor advised them to be strong for her. A few weeks later, Esther asked Dil why he hadn't visited Ogechi as he promised. He dismissed her concerns, bragging about paying the hospital bills and insisting he owed Ogechi nothing. Esther was deeply disappointed by his callousness. Meanwhile, Ogechi's mother visited her with food, heartbroken over her daughter's situation. During a call with Isioma, Ogechi expressed doubts about her music deal, mentioning that Donflex's response had been unconvincing. Isioma reassured her that everything would work out and promised to follow up. The next day, Isioma went to Donflex's office to discuss the status of Ogechi's contract. Donflex explained that the deal couldn't proceed because Ogechi couldn't walk, suggesting they wait until she recovered before reconsidering. Later, Isioma visited Ogechi at home and asked about her meeting with Donflex. Ogechi explained what happened, and Isioma comforted her, saying that when one door closes, God opens another. Isioma then inquired if Dil had called, but Ogechi said no. While they talked, Isioma decided to call Dil herself. After introducing herself, she confronted him about why he hadn't checked on her cousin. Instead of engaging, Dil rudely ended the call. Shocked by his heartlessness, Isioma expressed her frustration, but Ogechi advised her to ignore him. At Dil's house that same day, Esther was on a suspicious phone call that she quickly ended when Dil entered. This raised his suspicions, and he demanded to see her phone. When she refused, asserting her right to have male friends, Dil forcibly grabbed her phone and read her messages. Accusing her of being unfaithful, he called her a cheap cheat. Furious, Esther declared their relationship over and left. The following day, Isioma took Ogechi to Dil's house. At the gate, Isioma asked the gateman to inform his boss about their visit. However, the gateman forgot to ask for their names, irritating Dil, who berated him. When Dil came out and saw Isioma and Ogechi, he was livid. Isioma revealed that she got his information from the hospital, angering Dil even more. He threatened to sue the hospital and demanded they leave. However, Isioma stood her ground. Their argument attracted Dil's father, who came out to investigate. After hearing Isioma's story, he expressed disappointment in his son and invited the girls inside. Once they left, Dil took his frustration out on the gateman. Inside, Dil's father apologized to the girls and questioned Dil about why he had kept everything to himself. Dil tried to make excuses, but Ogechi, overwhelmed by emotion, called him out for confining her to a wheelchair and ruining her life. Unable to continue, she let Isioma explain the situation to Dil's father. Deeply disappointed, Dil's father scolded him for his neglect and cruelty. The next morning, while Isioma and Ogechi were eating breakfast, Dil entered and was visibly irritated to see his food on the same table as theirs. Furious, he called out to the cook, Ireti, and insulted her for serving his food in such proximity. He then stormed out. That evening, Dil vented to his cousin at a bar about the tension at home. His cousin, however, reminded him that he was responsible for Ogechi's condition. The next day, while Isioma and Ogechi were watching TV, Dil entered and changed the channel without a word. When Isioma questioned him, he insulted her. His constant bitterness and lack of regard for others left everyone baffled. That night at the bar, Dil saw Esther with her new boyfriend. Enraged, he approached them, but Esther dismissed him without giving him the attention he sought, leaving him humiliated. Back at home, Ogechi, alone, tried to wheel herself to the kitchen for sugar, but bumped into Dil. When she asked for his help, he insulted her and told her to leave his house. His cruelty left her in tears. Later that evening, as Dil's father prepared to leave for a business meeting, Dil pleaded with him to send the girls away, claiming he couldn't cope with them. His father refused, insisting they remain until he returned. He also assured Dil that he had been consulting doctors who confirmed that Ogechi could walk again after surgery. The next morning, Ogechi was in the kitchen preparing breakfast when Dil entered, asking about Areti's whereabouts. Ogechi explained that Areti had gone home because her child was unwell. She offered to make him breakfast, but he declined. As they talked, Isioma walked in, and Dil left in annoyance. That evening, while making business calls in his room, Dil was disturbed by Ogechi's singing. Frustrated, he stormed into her room and berated her for making noise. Ignoring her attempt to explain, he pushed her wheelchair out of her reach and left, leaving Ogechi in tears. Hours later, when Isioma returned, she heard Ogechi crying and rushed to her room. Finding the wheelchair far from Ogechi, she realized Dil had been responsible. Enraged, Isioma confronted Dil, yelling at him for his cruelty and questioning whether his mother had ever loved him. This provoked Dil, who threatened to hit her if she mentioned his mother again. Unfazed, Isioma dared him to try, and after a heated exchange, she walked away. The next morning, Dil called his father, demanding that the girls be sent away for disrespecting him. His father refused, urging him to make peace with them instead. Angry at his father's response, Dil lashed out at his secretary at work. Later, Dil complained to his cousin at the bar about the girls, particularly Isioma's defiance. His cousin advised him to be kinder to avoid further conflicts, but Dil stubbornly dismissed the suggestion. That night, Isioma came home in high spirits. When Ogechi asked why, Isioma shared exciting news about the possibility of Ogechi walking again. Although thrilled, Ogechi quickly grew worried about the cost of the surgery. Isioma reassured her that the person responsible for her condition, Dil, would cover the expenses, bringing some relief to Ogechi despite her doubts about Dil's cooperation. A few hours later, Dill came home with a girl. Isioma greeted him and requested to speak with him privately. Surprisingly, he agreed and asked his girlfriend to wait in his room. During their conversation, Isioma told Dill about the medical procedures Ogi's doctors had recommended to help her walk again. She then asked for his financial assistance. However, Dill refused to pay the bills and insulted both women. Although hurt and worried, Isioma and Oge comforted themselves, knowing that Dill's father had insisted they stay. The next morning, while Isioma was in the kitchen, Dill's girlfriend rudely requested that she prepare breakfast for her. Isioma immediately confronted her, asking if she had no shame for following a man she had just met to his home. The girlfriend became angry and reported Isioma to Dill. Furious, Dill stormed into the kitchen and attempted to hit Isioma, but she firmly warned him not to, saying he wouldn't like the outcome. Dill backed off, but took the bread Isioma had been toasting before leaving. That night, Isioma and Ogi were watching a movie in the living room when Dill went out to pick up his guest. Later, as Dill and his girlfriend went upstairs, he was about to kiss her when he suddenly clutched his chest and collapsed to the floor. Startled and scared, the girlfriend grabbed her belongings and left the house hurriedly. On her way out, she lied to Isioma and Oge, saying she had forgotten something, and left in a rush. Oge suspected something was wrong and pleaded with Isioma to check on Dill. Initially reluctant, fearing his reaction, Isioma eventually agreed after Oge's insistence. When Isioma entered Dill's room, she was horrified to find him lying lifeless on the floor. Panicking, she called out to Oge, who came running. Both women were terrified and tried calling Dill's father, but he didn't answer. Oge then suggested they call the gateman, and together they rushed Dill to the hospital. The next morning, after returning from the hospital, Oge was visibly shaken and told Isioma she wanted them to leave the house. She was scared and traumatized by what had happened, saying that if Dill had died, they might have been accused of killing him since he disliked them. However, Isioma refused, explaining that they were close to achieving their goals. She urged Ogi to remain calm, but Oge was still uneasy. The following day, Dill's father arrived to discharge him from the hospital. On their way home, Dill confided in his father, expressing his shock at surviving and admitting he would have died if they hadn't acted quickly. His father advised him to control his temper and treat people with kindness. When they arrived home, Isioma welcomed them, and Dill's father thanked her for her help. She informed him that she and Ogi planned to leave, but he pleaded with them to stay, explaining that he had spoken with the doctors and arranged for Ogi's surgery. He assured her that he would pay all the medical bills and take care of Ogi until she recovered. Isioma thanked him, and he left. After his father left, Dill approached Isioma to apologize for his past behavior. Isioma accepted his apology, but insisted that he also apologize to Ogi since she had been the one to save his life. Dill went to Ogi's room to apologize, and Ogi graciously accepted. As they talked, Dill complimented her voice, which took Ogi by surprise. The next day, Dill's behavior changed noticeably. He even started wheeling Ogi around the house, a gesture that impressed both women. Isioma was surprised but pleased with Dill's transformation. She also shared the news about Dill's father covering Ogi's medical expenses. Ogi expressed her gratitude to Isioma for always fighting for her, and the sisters celebrated the positive developments. When Areti returned to work, she was worried, fearing that Dill would scold her. Instead, she was pleasantly surprised when he calmly asked about her daughter. Later that afternoon, Dill wheeled Ogi into the living room. It was the day of her surgery, and Dill's father spent time reassuring everyone before instructing Dill to accompany Ogi to the hospital. Though nervous, Ogi was comforted by their encouragement and left for the procedure. A few weeks later, Ogi successfully completed her treatment and regained her ability to walk. Dill congratulated her and shared exciting news. His producer friend was interested in hearing her demo. Overjoyed, Ogi thanked him profusely. A few days later, while Ogi was in her room, she discovered her song trending online. Excited, she called Isioma, and the two celebrated together. The next day, Dill visited Ogi's house to share even more good news. She had been signed to a major record label. Overwhelmed, Ogi asked why he came in person instead of sending a message. Dill admitted that he wanted to see her. They continued their cheerful conversation before he left. Afterward, Isioma teasingly asked Oji if something was going on between her and Dil, but Oji laughed it off. Meanwhile, at Dil's house, Areti was still adjusting to his newfound kindness. At Oji's house, she was getting ready for a date with Dil when Isioma received a call from Donflex. Annoyed, Isioma answered and gave him a piece of her mind before hanging up. Later, Dil arrived at Oji's house to pick her up. Before they left, Isioma, as protective as ever, warned Dil to take good care of her sister. Dil reassured her and jokingly called her Pineapple Head, a throwback to their earlier arguments. He opened the car door for Oji with a smile, and the couple drove off, leaving Isioma amused. Thank you for following this captivating story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more exciting, engaging, and inspiring Nigerian movies. See you next time.